Welcome to the third part. If you haven't watched the earlier parts, make sure to watch them first. Click here to watch. So, Shiv reached to meet Daksha and others. Daksha spotted concern on Shiv's face, similar to that of Sati the previous night. He continued on how Meluha became the richest and the most powerful country in the world, along with no crime and citizens leading ideal lives. It was a perfect society, according to Daksha, but Shiv poked in, correcting that it is near perfect. To be perfect isn't a destination, it is a continuous process. When Parvateshwar agreed to it, it was their knowledge of Somras that guaranteed their superiority over other rivals. Daksha revealed that even Chandravanshis have the knowledge of Somras, but weren't able to mass produce it. The concept of Somras raised curiosity within Shiv. He asked how and where it is produced. To it, Emperor said that Somras is produced in a secret location in Meluha called Mount Mandar and then distributed to temples in the land where trained Brahmins prepare solution and administer it to people. However, one of the key ingredients in Somras is water of Saraswati River, which is formed by the confluence of Satluj and Yamuna rivers up north. Without the waters of Saraswati, Somras is incomplete, and that was the weak point which the jealous Chandravanshis exploited. Somehow they changed the course of Yamuna so that it meets their main river Ganga and blamed some minor earthquake for it. Emperor Daksha's father, King Brahmanayak, had to attack on Swadweep, the Chandravanshi kingdom, to take over the control of Yamuna river and restore it to its original place. Parvateshwar's chest swelled up with pride as he was a part of war too. But the treacherous Chandravanshi had done something because of which Saraswati had started dying. It doesn't even reaches the sea. It ends up in an inland delta. Shiva questioned why wouldn't Meluhans go on war and end this once and for all. Daksha put forth two reasons. First was that Chandravanshi's population was 80 million, whereas there were only 8 million Suryavanshis, so they would clearly lose their tactical advantage to the sheer number of soldiers. Second was that Chandravanshis didn't follow the combat rules and were unethical too. Meluhan soldiers would never attack someone below their waist. A cavalry won't attack footed soldier, and so on. That doesn't make us cowards, Parvateshwar growled. The conversation came at halt. On ringing of Prahar bell, everyone said a quick prayer and Daksha asked if Shiv had to leave. Shiv was expectantly looking out of the window, but denied to leave, hiding pain and confusion inside him. He asked Daksha to continue. The emperor put forth the unfinished task of his father King Brahmanayak and Lord Rama himself to save the Swadvipans, save them from their treacherous rulers, and subsequently from their own sorry and meaningless existence. Shiv keenly guessed that his blue throat had some role to play in this. He asked Daksha regarding it. Daksha replied that his people had concerns attacking the large numbered Swadvipans, but revolutionizing them was an even bigger challenge. Having Nilkant on the side would ensure people's faith. Suddenly, Shiv's uncle's words came to his mind. Your destiny lies beyond these mountains. Whether you fulfill it or run away once again is up to you. Daksha unveiled the prophecy. Lord Ram had already warned that no philosophy, how perfect, would only last for a finite period. That's when the Nilkant will arrive. Solve the problems insurmountable for ordinary men. Shiv said to himself, they want me to destroy entire way of life of 80 million people and all by myself. Are they mad? Daksha even revealed that Nilkant can't be a Meluhan, he has to be a foreigner, whose throat will turn blue on consuming Somras, according to the legend. The truth hurt Shiva hard. Srinagar, the first night, sudden illness, all due to the Somras. He was disappointed since Meluhan tricked him and his tribe too. Everyone was making up excuses when Shiva questioned, but Parvateshwar was honest. He apologized from the depth of his heart and accepted that it didn't suit the ways of Lord Ram. Shiv realized that Parvateshwar was a true follower of the ideologies of Sri Ram. He kept a few conditions and even restricted to publicly announce the arrival of Nilkant. as he wanted to scrutinize the Meluhan ways of living. Shiv finally accepted his destiny. He requested if he could see the place where Somras was produced, as if it felt of immense importance to his heart. As Shiv and Nandi were returning to their own guest house, Nandi's eyes were glued to the ground, as he felt extremely disgusted on lying to his lord regarding the administration of Somras. Shiv patted him on his back and asked him never to lie to him again. Nandi took a blood oath. Suddenly, out of nowhere, Shiv initiated a topic of different kinds of ideologies of people in Meluha, amongst whom he talked about getting Shuddhikaran done on touching someone. Nandi looked troubled and asked, "Did you touch a Vikarma?" Shiv's face changed color. Shiv's face changed color abruptly. He asked Nandi to return to guest house. He went to garden and waited for Sati. After an hour, realizing that she won't come, he decided to leave. He noticed a bead bracelet. It was hers. Shiv had seen it on her right hand, but the string wasn't broken. She left it for him. Shiv brought it near his face, kissed it, and kissed it gently. It was a day's journey to Mount Mandar. An elite team of soldiers called the Arishtanemi protected Mount Mandar and the route to it. Shiv asked Kanakhala whom were they going to meet there. Brahaspati, the chief scientist of the empire, she answered. As proposed, they were in chief scientist's cabin the following day. After greetings, Shiv was requested to take off the cravat so that Brahaspati could examine his throat. Brahaspati was in complete awe and was busy working out the implications of Nilkant's arrival. Shiv wanted to know how Somras exactly worked. Brahaspati explained that Somras dramatically slows down our aging process. We age because of oxidants released when the food that we eat is converted into energy with the help of oxygen we inhale. It's similar to oxidizing or rusting of iron when it comes in contact with air. Due to these oxidants, we rust from inside and eventually die. Somras reacts with these oxidants, absorbs them, and expels them in form of sweat or urine. These are toxic, and hence Meluhans are so strict about hygiene. After excretion, the underground drains safely carry the water out of city. After discussing its production, Brahaspati offered to take them around the facility. That's when he noticed the hesitation within Shiv, and immediately asked Nandi and Kanakhala to leave kindly, as he wanted to discuss with Shiv something in person. As they left, Brahaspati returned to Shiv with a smile and said, "Why don't you ask the question you really came to ask?" Shiv had a question regarding why only his throat turned blue in comparison of other foreigners. He even told that Emperor expected him to complete Lord Ram's unfinished task and destroy the Chandravanshis. Brahaspati was surprised on hearing this. He told that what Emperor said isn't completely correct. The legend only says that Nilkant won't be from Sapta Sindhu, or the land of 7 rivers, and he will be the destroyer of evil. On hearing this, Shiv mentioned Nagas, and Brahaspati seemed to hesitate a bit. Brahaspati steered the conversation back to Shiv's throat, turning blue. Shiv added that along with stopping degeneration of body, Somras also repaired a dislocated shoulder, a frostbitten toe. Brahaspati was unable to believe that Somras would repair an injury too. It was only supposed to prevent diseases and aging. He thought for a while and implied that as Shiv and his tribe belongs to highlands beyond Himalayas, they are habitual to inhaling less oxygen, and thereby lesser oxidation occurs, since the air gets thinner as we approach higher heights. But he thought that it was an partial explanation to Shiv's blue throat, and further research would surely provide the answer. Shiv read his intent and asked, "You don't believe in legend, do you?" Brahaspati smiled awkwardly and answered, "I believe in science. It provides a rational explanation, and if anything appears to be a miracle, it means that science behind it hasn't been deciphered yet." The royal procession, consisting of Emperor Daksha, his wife Virini, Sati, and Parvateshwar, was on its way to Mount Mandar. At a short distance from royal procession, in dense forest, A band of 50 soldiers moved along silently. The captain had a gold chain with crescent moon, a Chandravanshi symbol. A giant man walked next to him, covered from head to toe in a large robe. The only thing visible were his large almond-shaped eyes. The hooded figure said to Captain, Vishwadyuman, your symbol is visible. Vishwadyuman suggested to go ahead on path to confirm whether this is the right path to Mount Mandar, which their informant told them, and can come back later to kidnap her, since they were dangerously outnumbered. The hooded figure replied calmly, Have I ordered an attack? Then where does the question of being outnumbered comes in? A few hours delay won't bring heavens down. For now, follow. Vishwadyuman hated opposing his lord's views, since he was the one who found a rare Suryavanshi sympathetic to his cause. This breakthrough would make it possible to rip out and destroy the very heart of Meluha. They followed the royal caravan silently. Post the Mount Mandar tour, Shiv was in his royal guest room, where he saw royal caravans arriving. The Aristonemi quickly lined up for salute. However, it wasn't that gratitudeful to the royal family, which Shiv thought to be a Meluhan way of equanimity, which was challenged when Parvateshwar alighted from the last caravan. The captain quickly reached out to Parvateshwar, clicked his heels, body rigidified in attention, right hand ball into fist, and violently brought to the right chest, forming the traditional Meluhan salute, followed by a respectful bow. Other soldiers replicated too. Parvateshwar replied with a soft bow. Shiv saw respect and admiration for the general in each Aristonemi soldier's eyes. A little later, there was an opportunity. It was Daksha with a request for his family to have breakfast the next day with Nilkant. But he came to know what his lord thought about Somras and his experience in Meluha overall. Shiv modestly replied what he thought to be a wonderful country and worth fighting for. Yet he didn't know how he was gonna do it. Brahaspati, who accompanied Daksha, recommended that all should retire, with a wink to Shiv, who was quite hesitant to Emperor's childish belief. He agreed upon breakfast. The next morning, everyone was seated on the table, including Daksha, Vireni, Sati, a chair left empty for Nilkant, Brahaspati, Parvateshwar, and Kanakhala. Sati's glass fell down from the table, and as she bent down to pick it up, Nilkant, along with his trusted companion, Nandi, arrived. As Daksha introduced his wife to Nilkant, it was Sati's turn to be introduced. As Shiv had already met her stall, Sati rose, and Daksha introduced her to be his daughter, and even Shiv as the Nilkant, as he removed the cravat around his neck. Both of them were dumbstruck, rather mesmerized. Shiv was afloat in a peripheral world, where he was dancing with Sati. The glass which Sati recently picked up crashed on ground again. Daksha was enjoying like a director whose play was well set. It took 2 calls for Shiva to come out of his illusionized world. As the breakfast proceeded, Daksha proposed that Vireni and Sati could leave tomorrow, along with Shiv, as he had some inspection due. Vireni was fine with it. Shiv was delighted. And as he tried to read Sati's response, he hit a blank wall. Later, Sati whispered to him, Are you really the Nilkant? Apparently so, replied Shiv, playful grinning, asking, Impressed? What? Why should I be impressed? Was Sati's response to it. The mask was back. Towards the end of breakfast, Daksha ordered Parvateshwar to divide Aristonemi into 2 groups and send the half with Nilkant's carriage. Parvateshwar pointed out that it wasn't a good decision, as 1/3 of Aristonemi was already away, and reducing it further would be defortifying. However, Daksha was stubborn and replied that you yourself say that 1 Aristonemi is equal to 50 enemy soldiers. Do as I say. It will be fine. The next morning, Shiv, Sati, Vireni, and Nandi had to leave in the same carriage, as it was mandatory to have at least 3 dummy carriages in a caravan carrying Emperor. As they left, Daksha was questioned by troubled Parvateshwar on how and why does the Emperor trust Shiv so much? Daksha's explanation to this was simple. As Daksha is trying to propagate Suryavanshi ways to whole India, including the Chandravanshis, he does so to impress his late father. Similarly, Shiv will help them fight and win this undeclared war to impress Sati. As the entourage was out of depths of Mount Mandar, Verini requested the carriage to be stopped. She, Sati, Shiv, and Nandi went down on their knees to pay tributes to the utterly beneficial mountain. "It's her," said Vishwadyuman, passing the scoop to his lord, the hooded figure. The small platoon was at safe distance, concealed in dense forest. The hooded figure noticed that the muscular man, Shiv, was the same one because of whom the attack at Brahma temple had failed. Vishwadyuman suggested that they attack now. His lord denied the proposal, saying that the new Suryavanshi carriages have emergency alarm systems. "We don't want to invite more trouble. We'll wait till they pass halfway through, so that the backup won't arrive. So that while the backup arrives, we are far gone. The quicker the attack is, lesser the men get injured." Vishwadyumana was yet again impressed at the tactical brilliance of his lord. Want to know what happens next? Subscribe and click on the bell button so that you are notified whenever we upload the next part. It's coming up very soon. It would reveal the plot of Nagas and Chandravanshis. So stay tuned. Don't forget to like, share with your friends, family, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.